We welcome now our Bloomberg TV and radio audiences worldwide, and joining us is the Intel CEO, Pat Gelsinger. Pat, good morning to you, and thank you for your time. You know, the stock is down more than 10%, and we're kind of here again, right, where there's the short term and the long term where you're trying to convince investors of a return to technology leadership and also grow a Foundry business. Have you an updated timeline on when you think you will achieve that target?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. And obviously, hey, we delivered a solid Q1, right? We met on revenue, we beat on earnings, a bit tepid in the first half, as we said, but we see a lot of improvement as we go through the year. And with that, obviously, the Foundry business, as I would say, we're going to see progress on the Foundry business every quarter from now to the end of the decade. It just gets better and better as we move into our new technologies. As we've said, getting back to process leadership, which have better ASPs, and we can build better products with them. We win more external Foundry customers as our scale grows. And we're also get past this period where we had to invest to catch up, right, and create the capacity for a decade plus of underinvestment. So everything there becomes a tailwind going forward, and we hit key milestones. And one of those I was very proud of. Just this week, we went to production with our first server part on Intel 3. The U.S. is back to leadership process technology being manufactured on our shores for the first time in a decade. So some key milestones, and I'll just say everything is coming together, as we would say, and we're very optimistic that, yes, in fact, we will deliver the Foundry business and the manufacturing capabilities as we've laid out for the company, the industry, and the world.
Stifel, interestingly, analysts over there, 2024 should mark the bottom in many aspects, Pat. But they really want to understand the pace of the climb that is necessary. How can you tell us about how quickly you'll be able to scale back that market share that you've so far lost?
Yeah, and we look at Intel now in these two different perspectives. Intel products, and we expose through our recast financials that we have a very solid fabless business with healthy financials, and we expect those to improve over time. But the big story has been about exposing the Foundry financials and the losses associated with those. And what we see is over the decade, that will cross through profitability in the middle of the period for that business as we get back to process leadership and start to moderate the level of investment required to go rebuild that decade of underinvestment. And as we do that, if we would have that today, we'd be more than double the earnings this year that we're forecasting. So it becomes a huge positive lever for us. And as I like to say, all of that's in our control. The wafers, getting back to leadership, the product implications of it, all of these things are our control. And it gets better as we win additional external Foundry customers.
The link, I think, Pat, is about growing market share of server to support the costs necessary for the Foundry business. You were asked an interesting question on the call in the context of servers built on x86 versus ARM-based alternatives. And you gave a pretty thorough explanation about the place of all of those particular data center CPUs. But what I didn't hear was what's happening out there in the real world. Where are data centers being built, and what are they being built on right now?
Yeah, and this is important because we've been in a period now for a number of quarters where data center CPUs have been fairly tepid. And we do see that improving. We had good improvement in the first quarter of the year, and we expect that to continue through the year. And, there's time for refresh in those data centers. But we're also seeing that the CPUs now as head nodes for AI use cases, we posted some pretty incredible results that we can now run 70 billion parameter models natively on the CPU. I don't need a special accelerator. I can do everything on the software stack that I already use inside of data centers. And we're seeing that these power efficient products that we're bringing to the marketplace, such as our Xeon 6 that we just announced, are going to enable us to stabilize and regain market share. With much higher core counts, the ASPs are going up very nicely on that through the year. So we saw growth in Q1. We expect that to continue through the year. And as we get to the back half of the year, our accelerator product line with Gaudi, Xeon plus Gaudi, we believe becomes a very compelling solution for enterprise customers. And we had quite a number of announcements of those this quarter. Customers such as Bosch and Dell and Supermicro, all bringing those into the marketplace. Roche and IBM and key cloud partners like Naver, the fastest growing cloud provider in Asia. All of those coming alongside the Intel strategy. So we see that momentum building, Ed.
Momentum, and we want to just remind us that we are with TV radio audiences, the CEO of Intel, Pat Gelsinger. Pat, on the momentum, everyone wants to talk about AI in all of its ways and means. You've been focusing in on an AI PC, and I'm just really interested in, ultimately, you're going to be, shipping in excess of originally 40 million AI PC CPUs. That's the target for 2024. But what's the demand like at the moment, Pat, and what's the cost like?
Yeah, and when we announced the category at the end of last year, Carolyn, it was sort of like everybody says, wow, what's going on? The AI PC, and you're seeing a flurry of interest of other people coming into that market. But Intel, unquestionably the leader, first to declare the market, first to describe the use cases, and our first product, Core Ultra, is having a very robust ramp into the marketplace. And to some degree, I'm racing to catch up to the demand. We're meeting all of our supply commitments, but not all of the upside requests yet, that we're getting from customers. So this is very robust. We expect that we'll exceed the 40 million units this year. We'll be introducing our next generation product in the middle of this year. So all of these pieces, we are very optimistic. And you're seeing use cases and communications where all of a sudden I get summarization, contextualization, translation in real time, all running on my PC. Developers, gamers, all of these use cases are now becoming AI enabled, and Intel leading the AI PC parade. It's a very exciting time for what I believe will be the biggest cycle of PC refresh and expansion that we've seen in likely decades.
Pat, this is a conversation about your technology and about ultimately your fundamentals of a business. I'm just going to take a turn for a moment, and it's a sensitive question, so I give you a moment to think about it. But given your relationship with Israel and the fact that you are one of the largest employers over there, how are you currently feeling about students in the United States protesting against endowments being invested in companies that are associated with Israel at this moment?
Well, we have been in Israel for 40 years now. And it's been an incredible country for us, incredible innovators, and extraordinary resilience by the Israeli people. And they continue, despite the challenges of the war that's going on there, to deliver against their objectives. So we're very committed to support our teams wherever they are in the world. That said, hey, we seek peace, and we've been clearly emphasizing that we need to find routes of sustainable peace in the region, and have been supporting perspectives that reinforce that across the region. And as we look across the world, we say, boy, there continues to be the turbulence, and fundamentally our strategy is around building globally resilient supply chains that are balanced across the world. So our core strategy is emphasizing that there will be these challenges across the world, whether that's in Israel, Ukraine, or Asia, and we are committed to making sure that we can support, the global markets that we serve, right, with a strategy that really was built for a turbulent world.
Pat, let's end on AI accelerators. Gaudi is on track for 500 million this year. AMD's MI300X will probably do 3.5 billion, and NVIDIA, with its generations, will do 40 billion. You've said that choice is important, and also the CPU is important, and I accept that. Many share it. But do you see a clear path where the numbers I just outlined rebalance in your favor in the AI accelerator market going forward?
Given the strength that we saw at our Vision event that we had 20 plus customers coming out publicly in support of our accelerator and our Xeon plus accelerator strategy. We're really starting to see that pipeline of activity convert, Ed. And ultimately, much of the activity that you've seen so far on generative AI has been in cloud training. And now, and I think the ultimate monetization of AI happens as business deployments start to occur. And those are the areas that we see strength. We launched the open platform for enterprise AI. How do we enable these use cases inside of the enterprise, but in an open architecture that many get to participate in? We announced the open AI networking, from closed proprietary networking to standard Ethernet-based scale-up and scale-out networking. We announced that this quarter, and obviously the momentum that we're seeing with Gaudi, all of that $500 million, almost all of it's in the second half of the year. So you can see a very accelerated, cycle. A lot of enthusiasm for Gaudi. The unquestioned leader in TCO, total cost of ownership for enterprises, building on the Xeon franchise and the position that we have in the enterprise, and literally ISVs and cloud providers, but most importantly, enterprise customers seeing that value proposition. Yeah, we feel like we're gaining a lot of momentum now in this category and feel good about the potential for our AI everywhere, AI PC, AI Edge, AI Enterprise, and AI Cloud.
Ending on an optimistic note, we thank you so much, Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger there, on all things AI, all things Intel numbers.